Hello, it's Patricia Warby, Alchemy Therapies here, and I'm talking today about a very important concept in health and healing, and that is something you may not have thought of before, and that's information, the quality of information. Now, let's break that word down a little bit. Let's have a look at in-formation. Yeah, it's very interesting to break that down into those three components to bring into the body, to create form in bringing into the body, and the act of being in that state, which is basically what ation means. It's an act of being. So let's think about that for a moment. When you have dis-ease, now that's another word that can be broken down. Think about that one, dis-ease. You are in a state of poor information, of information that's perhaps incorrect, wrong, biased, old, and no longer accurate. There are all sorts of reasons why the energy and information that you're carrying in your system can be wired wrongly. And usually it's because of adverse childhood experiences, things that happen to you in childhood, usually problems with emotional attachment. And that is so, so common. And what it creates is a state of imbalance in the system because our bodies basically are linked via our autonomic nervous system, which interprets the environment around us to create states of energy flow in the body. And what I have discovered from my research, and certainly the experiences I've had, is that when you have the wrong information or it's inaccurate, it might have been accurate in your childhood because it will tell you, for instance, that you're blocked or stuck or there's nothing you can do, and you take that into your adult life as a belief that you're blocked and there's nothing you can do, when in fact you have other options, then you can imagine that the reality that you experience is going to be very warped by that worldview. And so the quality of the information that you take in and you carry around with you is really going to dictate your experience of life. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could change the informational input? Well, we can. One of the first things you need to understand is that we've been lied to all these years. Now, I did biochemistry, pharmacology, and nutritional medicine at university, and I learned an awful lot, but I never learned this, okay? That the body is not just composed of matter, of sort of solid billiard ball type molecule interactions that form, new biochemistry and create the signals that power our bodies. That is actually far too slow to give us the experiences we have. For instance, being able to play the piano or dance or coordinate with other people. It is almost unexplainable at the level of biomolecular science, because basically it's not taking biophysics into account, and biophysics is about the energy and information flow in that system, and it incorporates things like the quality of light in your environment. Now, I've talked about that in other videos, and the way that light is filtered through the eyes and through the skin to change the energy output of your cells. And so light is information, of course. Sound would be the same, sound resonance. Even the DNA in our cells has a resonance to it and a vibration that picks up and transmits and stores information. It's just that we've never known that because we tend to isolate parts. We look at the parts of a system to understand it. This is a reductionist view of what reality actually is. To break things down into their components in order to understand them actually takes away the vitality and the life force from the way things really work inside. Now, I was really drawn to this information for writing my book, Life Illuminated, which I wrote, it must be 3 or 4 years ago now. I'm just in the process of updating, because I was absolutely fascinated to find that not only did DNA have a vibration, but that water, which you previously thought was just H2O, is organized as a liquid crystal structure within the body, which forms what's called the fourth phase. It's like a gel-like layer that forms around all the cells and tissues of the body and all the molecules within the body, and creates a lot of the energy and information flow that enables communication between different parts of the body. So the quality of your water is really important. Where does water come from? Well, yes, you drink water, but you also create it in your mitochondria. Now, mitochondria are the little energy factories in your cell, which are, well, they were once bacteria, which combined with the prototype for the animal cell thousands of years ago in evolution, and have now formed a symbiotic relationship. What mitochondria give us is the ability to form energy and water from oxygen and sugars. And so we breathe in oxygen, of course, and we take in food, which creates the substrate for that reaction within the mitochondria. But that water that it generates as a byproduct, as the end result of that transformation, is not the same as water that you get coming from the tap. It has this liquid crystalline structure, which is able to store information at a quantum level, a bit like quantum computers now use. And so it's no surprise to me, for instance, that we can actually transmit information when no actual molecules are present. Now, there was a scientist called Jean-Pierre Beneviste, I think his name was, and he did an experiment with DNA. Now, we all know DNA is the sort of substance that forms the genes in our cells and transmits genetic information from one generation to another. And we know it as the familiar double helix, but it has a sort of code buried within it, which is all the little the ladder rungs, if you like, of that double helix have a particular configuration, and you can read the letters of that code, and each person's genetic inheritance is unique because it's the way the letters are arranged that make you you. Now, that's fairly standard biomolecular science, but what Jean-Paul did was he isolated a strand of DNA, actually from the HRV virus originally, and then he diluted it hugely, and he placed it next to a completely empty test tube. Well, it had the substrates, the basic building blocks of DNA in it, so amino acids and so on. And then he caused the original test tube to kind of resonate and vibrate. And what he witnessed in the second test tube is that the molecules in the second test tube sort of assembled themselves into a complete copy of the original HIV DNA without actually having any DNA in that second test tube. Now, you can imagine this is way outside of the kind of science at the time. We're talking the 1980s. And he was called a quack, and it was thought to be complete pseudo-science. But subsequent testing has shown by different researchers that this is in fact possible. And it seems that, in fact, our bodies work in the same way, in that it's the resonance of molecules which create the information structure. Now, how does that interact with our emotions? Well, interestingly, some emotions have a high vibration, as you can imagine: joy, transcendence, happiness, gratitude, and others have a lower vibration, the ones of guilt and shame and fear, for instance. Anger is kind of midway because it's sort of moving you towards motivation. It's not in itself a bad emotion. It's just one that we don't find very pleasant to feel. But the lower energy vibrations, of course, are changing our molecular structures. Therefore, they're changing the way our cells communicate. And so we're getting far more inflammation in the brain, in different parts of our bodies, causing diseases. Long-term inflammation, as we now know, is at the basis of most disease. So changing the quality of the information in your system by resonating with more joyous emotions, gratitude. You can enhance gratitude. You can do practices which enable you to find a connection with a better feeling thought. You can surround yourself with people who feel kinder to you, who feel like they get you. And sometimes that's not possible in the families that we grew up in, but if we can find our tribe, if we can find people that we really truly connect with, that is helpful for resonance, as is being in nature, because nature actually has a massively important connection with us. We evolved in nature, we're part of nature. And if we look at, for instance, going out into the green environment of a forest, you're actually receiving reflected infrared light, but that's why things are green, is because they're reflecting red. And you're actually bathing in not only good quality infrared light, but also the oxygen which plants give off as a byproduct of their photosynthesis. So there are many ways in which we can enhance our health that don't rely on chemicals, that don't rely on a sort of linear thinking of how the body works. The body is not linear. It works as a web of interconnectivity. And I am absolutely fascinated to give out more of this information on how this intercellular communication happens. And I'm doing a couple of talks coming up soon. One's going to be on the web, hopefully for the Awakening Heart Collective in March. And I'm also preparing a private course, which I'll give more details of in due course. But look, if any of this sounds interesting to you and you want to improve the quality of your information, don't forget, you can find me through the books on Amazon, Life Illuminated. I've got 8 books now, that's just one of them. Or you can contact me on alchemytherapies.co.uk and let's see where we can help you. Take care, everybody. Bye for now.